This training video is designed to show the steps in order to create a new submission to the EPA with a pending label. So to begin, we'll start with all registrations, search for the desired registration, and enter that registration. Next, we want to navigate to the regulatory action section and hit create. We will then complete the information on the screen. Once the information has been completed, you will hit save. To make a side comment, a dossier will need to be created if this label is part of a submission package that includes data. So any sort of studies. These are the type of examples of what we consider data documents: summary, study reports, analytical method, guidelines, or specifications. And if any of these are part of the submission, a dossier template will need to be created. Otherwise, we will hit save. The next step is extremely dependent on the type of submission that's being made, but at a minimum, at this point in the process, you want to attach any received documents from either the agency, other members of the team, as to why this submission is being made. So you simply hit upload and select the documents. If a declaration of composition or a CSF is being submitted, or a change of specification or production sites, those can be included at this time. We will include the master label in step 3. The next step is to create a new pending label from the currently approved label. I would recommend you first go to EPA's website, PPLS, enter the EPA number, and verify the last approved master label date, and then compare that to Viva. Once you've verified the date, we simply move to the master label section, find the correct text date, and then we're going to open this label in a new tab. So now we have the most recently approved label open. You can see this based on the bottom text date where this says master and 5/24/2022. We're now going to make a copy of this label in order to work off of it and create the next version that will be submitted to EPA. You can do that by clicking on the 3 action dots and then make a copy. This box will open and you want to complete the name in this format. So with the registration number, the letters ML, the product name, and then the regulatory action. We will go back to the registration to get the regulatory action number that we just created. This regulatory action number is very important because this will allow you to search for the label later. Next, it's very important to complete the metadata, add any comments that are specific to the submission, and update the text date with today's date. Next, you will hit save and the page will redirect you back to the main library. You can see this is the label we just worked on, and we simply want to open it again. Now that we have the label and the metadata correct, we're ready to make the edits that have been requested to this document. We will do this by opening it in Microsoft Office, and the document will open on your desktop. The first step is to remove all of the previous strike-throughs and highlights from the label. Once you have removed the highlights, you want to make the edits that were requested by the agency or internal. In order to track those changes, we are going to put on track changes. So you go to the review tab and turn on track changes. We then will begin to make the changes. We have removed the 2 claims that the agency suggested. It is also important that if this label has not been turned into an in-view label, that is done at this point. And finally, we want to change the word master to pending to show that this is a different label, and change the text date to today's date. Once all changes have been made, simply close the document. We're now ready to check the document back in, check in edits. You can make comments here for this particular version. We now have the label with our changes showing up on the screen. And the next step will be dependent on who has made the edits. If the label needs to be reviewed, you can send the label for review. So you would send for review. If the label is completed, you can then directly start the direct release process if it's ready to be submitted. In this example, I'm going to send it for review. You would want to send it to the responsible registration manager. In this example, I'm going to send it to myself. Add any comments and put a due date. At this point in the process, you would simply wait for the label to be reviewed by the registration manager. Once the label has been reviewed by the responsible federal registration manager, you will receive an email notification that looks like this. You can simply click on the link and this will take you to the label. You can see that it has been reviewed and it is in the state of reviewed. You can then simply release it. Next, return to the regulatory action that we created in step 1. Navigate to the master label section, hit create, and add the document that we just released. If you hit search, you can enter the regulatory action number, and this document will now pull up. This is the reason it's so important to enter that regulatory action number in the title. Next, you will enter the text date. So this is going to be the date that is at the bottom of the label. If more than one date is there, enter the most recent one and then hit save. Once you're satisfied that all documents have been attached, this may also now include any submission cover letters. They can also be placed in the attachments section. These attachments could include email correspondence, application forms, cover letters, or region submission specific local documents. Finally, we're going to move the status of the regulatory action to submitted by entering the expected submission date of today, the actual submission date of, I'm assuming, probably tomorrow, and the expected approval is in about a month and a half, and then start. You will see that when you move the regulatory action to submitted, the master label is also moved to submitted. At this stage in Viva, we aren't able to directly export the master label as 2 PDFs out of the system and email it, but this is an enhancement we hope to make in the future. So in the meantime, in order to create a shaded PDF and a clean PDF that will be sent to EPA, we're going to open the document in a new tab, click on the document files, and first we want to download this viewable rendition. So what this will do is download the viewable rendition as the shaded copy. So we'll click here and hit download. Next, we want to change this from the copy of the label that has the strike-throughs to the copy of the label that is clean. We'll do that by clicking on the Word rendition settings and changing it to no markups. You can now see the highlights or the strike-throughs have been removed, the track changes were turned off, and we're going to do the same thing of download this new viewable rendition. You can now see the 2 labels in my download folder, and when we open those, they have the document number as well as the version stamped on them, and you can see this one has no track changes while the other one does. And this is what will be emailed to the Federal Registration Manager or directly to EPA.